Simon, thank you so much for coming down for this sofa talk. It's a pleasure to have you in
My
today.
pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Awesome. So there's a few topics that we wanted to speak to you about. Yourself being an expert in the infrastructure industry. You're the Business Development Director from Story Contracting. Mm-hmm. So you're well in the knowledge in the rail sector, aren't you? It's fair to say.
Rail and general construction sector as well, yes. Not just rail.
Awesome. So expand on that for me a little bit. Can you tell me about your role and what it is you do for Story?
Sure. Story Contracting is a Cumbrian-based family-owned, family-run business that has a large lot of work in the rail industry. Network Rail is our key client. But we also have a construction business. Based in Cumbria. We have a plant business as well. So we do a broad range of skills in the construction sector, but rail is our biggest market, but we're looking at expanding into highways, into energy as well. My role, I'm the Business Development Director for Story, and I look at those new opportunities and bringing work into the business.
All right, so what are you working on at the moment? Are you allowed to say?
Yeah, of course I can. We are a principal contractor for Network Rail in 3 of their regions, in the eastern side of England, in the northwest and central side of England, and in Scotland. And their Control Period 6 framework, we are a buildings and structures contractor into those 3 areas for Network Rail. That continues until April 2024, when the new control period CP7 starts, and we'll be looking at bidding for and securing more work in that next control period. And that is our meat and potatoes in the rail industry, supporting our client in Network Rail. But we've also just been awarded a contract for HS2 to build some structures across the new rail line in a place called South Culvert on phase 1. And that's been about 2 years in the making, but we've just had the contract signed, and we're now starting to look at how we're going to deliver those significant structures over the railway line. And we're looking at perhaps going into the light rail industry, so metros and trams and ultralight trams, perhaps in Coventry or in Yorkshire, and perhaps looking at supporting Manchester with its Metrolink, or Edinburgh with its metro system up there as well. So they're the areas we look at in rail.
All right, and let's find out a little more about yourself as a character. So what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
That's a very good question, because people do say to me, what is business development? People think business development is playing golf and having dinners. A, I can't play golf. And B, I'm of an age now, if I eat too much, I put too much weight on. So I try to steer away from those stereotypes. So business development for me is understanding firstly what my company wants to do, where it needs to be. So I need to really be sure of what the company wants to, where it wants to be. Not now, but in 3 to 5 years' time. So I need to understand where Story Contracting wants to be in 3 to 5 years' time. And of course, the board develop the strategy, and I understand what that strategy is. So that's the first thing I need to do my job. The second thing I need to know is what is the company's constraints, what is its restraints, and what is its limited ability, what is it limited by. So if we only have 100 people, but we win work for 200 people, then we can't obviously deliver it. So I need to understand A, what the company wants, and B, what the company is currently structured for. But then if I see an opportunity in 2 or 3 years' time that needs 200 people, then the company will uplift, train, and build its resources so it can deliver that piece of work. So it's a bit of a give and take relationship that I have with my organisation. So my organisation trusts me. It understands that I know what it wants. I understand what the constraints are. And then I will go out into business, into society, and look at opportunities that are perhaps not public yet, that are perhaps still below the horizon, that are still in the embryonic phase of development. And I need to monitor, track, look at, understand what they are, so that when they come to market, Story is positioned, ready to win and to develop that work. So it's a symbiotic relationship. It's I'm out there pushing and the company's out there pulling information. So it's just to make sure that I keep monitoring and tracking what's about to come to market. There's also a piece about influencing. I make sure I understand what the client wants. I make sure I understand what the client's hot buttons are, so that when we write our tender response, we're covering all those issues and concerns and their preferences in that. So it's very much a case of the company trusts me to perhaps go out on my own, come back to camp occasionally and download some information, but they trust me and understand. They trust me and know that I understand what it is that we're looking for.
How have you gained that trust, do you think, over the years?
That's a really good question. I suppose it's by results, and I suppose companies really, my previous companies I've worked for, have perhaps only seen the fruits of my labours after I've left, and a couple of companies I've worked for have actually had the kindness to say, Simon, really, we now know what you did, but it's because it's coming to hit us 2 to 3 years after you left the organisation. And it's very kind of them to say that, because they acknowledge what I do isn't necessarily tangible. What I don't hand something to somebody, I don't make something, I'm an overhead, but that overhead with me is an investment in the future in 3 to 5 years' time. And so it's the demonstrating that what I can do now won't pay dividends to perhaps 1, 2, 3 years down the line. But that's an example here in story. When I turned up 18 months ago as the business development director for rail, I was informed that the company strategy was to break into highways and energy, and it was a case of, Simon, highways, can you help us break into the highways market? And that was 18 months ago. And here we are 18 months later, from a fresh start, from a clean start. We're about to assist the Tier 1 contractors on the A66 dualling programme. We're about to assist a major contractor replace all the bridge decks on the M6 through the Lune Gorge. We're hopefully about to assist the winning tender for the Carlisle Southern Link Road, deliver all the structures on that piece of work. So in 18 months of a standing start, on 2 of those 3 projects, we've now secured millions of pounds worth of work on the A66 and on the M6. And that's through work that myself and my colleagues have done in the last 18 months.
Well, you're not messing about, are you?
Not messing around. In that one, it was manna from heaven, those 2. And this is where I use my background in the military to gain an advantage, because the first thing it was, when it was, Simon, can you help us break into highways? I thought, well, I know nobody in highways. Go to LinkedIn, type in a construction company who does highways, and as luck would have it, one of my old mates in the army was MD of the infrastructure element of that business. So I contacted him, said, hi Ross, you never guess what? And he said, yeah, these are the people you need to speak to. And over the last 18 months, I've been building a relationship with those people. We didn't know we were going to win any work. There was no guarantee we were going to win work, but I just formed a relationship so that we could understand them. They could see what story had to offer. And with most things in life, it's about trust and it's about people. And if you trust the person you're going to work with or have work for you, and you like them, and you get on with them, then you're likely to do better in business than you would do if there was an adversarial relationship. And so that is how we have secured work in the highway sector over the last 18 months. It's about a bit of luck, and serendipity always plays a huge part in work, and it's about who I know, and then it's about forming a relationship, even though nothing may have come out of it. In this instance, it has.
It's fantastic how it has come out of it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So do you think there's going to be more projects on the horizon for Story in regards to that sector for the highways?
Absolutely. But when you go into a new sector, you just got to be a wee bit careful. You don't want to go jumping in, climbing up the ranks of suppliers and trying to be the first and the best, because it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work in rail. You gain your reputation in millimetres and you lose it in metres. Yeah. So in highways, we need to demonstrate that what we do in rail, we can do in the highway sector. And the example is the bridge deck replacements on the M6. We do that for Network Rail over the railway, and there's no reason why we can't do that for national highways over the motorways. And so we'll bring those areas where we can deliver in the rail into the highway sector, but we'll do it slowly. We'll demonstrate that we are capable, trustworthy and reliable. And we will then build a portfolio of work, and then we will demonstrate that we are a capable supplier. And I suspect we would be happy being a tier 2 supplier into National Highways Tier 1 network. We don't have the geographical spread. We don't have the full breadth of capabilities to be a tier 1. And why would we want to then become a tier 1 if we can't do it geographically or across the full discipline? So we're happy to be a good, honest supplier into the tier 1s and continue to build our reputation as being a reliable, trustworthy and an excellent civil engineering contractor.
I'm wondering now, you said before, so you've kind of gone into this new sector. So your staff are used to doing a lot on the rail side. What have you done to combat staff shortages for this new sector that you've just started?
That's a very good question. I need to stop saying that's a very good question, by the way. Can I take a sip of coffee while I'm
Of course.
I'm just noting
You're
down.
absolutely smashing it. I'll tell you what, I loved what you just said. That you gain your reputation in millimetres and you use it in metres. That I could not have been worded any better. Where did you get that saying from? Is that your own?
I don't know.
It is now. Are you going to have a quote underneath saying it's
gain
from
it in
you?
millimetres, lose it in metres.
It was fantastic. That's definitely going to be one of your catchphrases now.
Thank you very much. Well, you asked me about skills. Can you not ask me that question now? The reason being is because I don't really know the answer so much about the highways industry, but I do know about that answer in the railway industry.
Okay, I'll tell you what then. Shall I start going down this list now?
Can you now? Because I've mentioned it. Do you want to ask me about my military career?
Yes.
Then I can. Because there's quite a bit of my backstory.
Let's get it in.
Yeah.
Okay. So I can't help but notice you used the word military before. You need to tell me a little bit more about that because I know you're a veteran.
See, veteran doesn't fit easy with me. See, when I hear the word veteran, I see a Chelsea pensioner or an old boy on Remembrance Day service with a walking stick and a row of medals on his chest. And the definition of a veteran is somebody who has served one day in the HM forces.
Is that really?
That's the definition of a veteran. Somebody who has served at least one full day.
Okay.
But I suppose by definition, yes, I'm a veteran. I did nearly 30 years in the army.
Wow.
I was the archetypal numpty at school. I was disruptive. I didn't bother. I was just more interested in girls and playing football. And at school, I wasted the opportunity that I had when I grew up in Luton. But then one day, the army came to school. This is in 1983. This is the year I was going to take my O-levels. And I hadn't done any prep. I hadn't done any of the coursework, any of the homework. And the army said, if you pass the entrance tests now, you're guaranteed a job in the army in September. And I thought, September's after my O-levels. Get a guaranteed job beforehand. I don't need to worry about my O-levels. Anyway, so I got into the army, got a guaranteed place. And guess what? Flunked out of school, left school at 15. And in September, when I was 16, I joined the army. And I had no idea what I was joining up into. No idea. But I just knew it was a job. And it was 1983, the recession was hitting, and I needed some work. But boy, the first day I was in the army, I realised I'd made the best decision of my life. Absolutely.
Oh, tell me about
Absolutely.
that. Can you remember that first day?
I can remember the first day. I can remember getting on the train at Luton, and I went to the Army Apprentice College at Chepstow. I was 16 and 2 months. And I got on the train, and my mother said to me, "You won't last 6, mate. You won't last 6 weeks." And I'll never forget that. And I went, "Okay." And I thought, right, I'll prove her wrong. And 30 years later, I said, "Mum, 6 weeks." Anyway, so I got on the train. As we got closer and closer to Chepstow, which is where my first unit was, I was getting scared. And we all got off the train at Chepstow, got met by the drill sergeant, put in the back of a 4-tonner, and we drove to Chepstow. And as soon as we went to the camp gate, something happened. I thought, wow, I've made a really good decision here. And the first 6 weeks was basic training, teaching you how to be a soldier. But the full 2 years was at an Army Apprentice College where I learnt to be a fitter on plant machinery in the Royal Engineers. So I went from being a divvy in Luton with nothing to 2 years later being a trained soldier and being a Class 2 apprentice with a Sitting Guilds qualification on diesel engines.
Wow.
And then I joined the army as a regular soldier at the age of 18, and for the next 8 years I had a brilliant career. I went to Belize in Central America. I went to the South Pole for 4 months. I went to Africa for 6 months. I went to Cyprus. I went to Germany. I went all over the world doing soldering stuff as a Royal Engineer, which was opened my eyes. Absolutely opened my eyes, and it promoted through the ranks and was selected for promotion to sergeant. And then when I was based at a unit in Ripon, my boss said to me, "Higgins, have you thought about being an officer?" I said, no. I said, "Well, we think you should apply." So I applied to be an officer, and actually I was successful in going to Sandhurst. So in this January 92, this numpty that fell out of school with nothing, age 15, walked through the gates into Sandhurst. officers, officer training selection, people from across society, from across the world. And there's Higgins going in there thinking, what on earth are you doing? Why are you doing this all again? Why are you going to go through basic training and all that horrible stuff again? But then Sandhurst, it was wonderful. I had a fantastic, I think perhaps one of the best years I had in the army. Now, one thing I don't tell many people about this because it is showing off is I was awarded the Sword of Honour.
Wow.
And the Sword of Honour had never at that point ever been given to an ex-ranker or awarded to an ex-ranker, because they always said, well, you have an advantage, you've been a soldier. But actually, in December 92, when I commissioned into the Royal Engineers, I left as the senior under officer and the Sword of Honour, presented to me by the Duchess of Kent.
This is where the MBE comes in, isn't it?
No, that's another story. No, that's another story. That's another story. So I did, where we go, 83, 9 years as a Royal Engineers soldier. Then I commissioned back into the Royal Engineers as an officer. And a year after leaving them as a soldier, I go back to working with soldiers I'd worked with as a soldier, and now I'm their officer. But it was fantastic because they knew I'd come up through the ranks and they knew I was able to understand what it's like to be a soldier. And there was that relationship between me and them that worked really well. And 20 years, and then that sort of 20 years as an officer was when the UK found itself in conflicts across the world more than when I was a soldier. So I deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Angola,
Wow.
which was not a widely known one. And then the adventure, to call it that is wrong, but the adventure of my military career was the Congo. I was sent to the Congo with my squadron. When I was commanding a squadron, we were sent to the Congo. And I was sent 2 weeks ahead of the squadron, and I was landed in the middle of this airfield in the Congo, and this French general came up to me because they were guarding the airfield, and he said in his French, in his English, he said, "What can you do for me, Simon?" And I said, "Well, General, give me a couple of days. I'll have a look." Anyway, what I did, I came up with a plan that the airfield that the UN was supplying aid into the Congo was limited by how much parking space there was. And I reckoned if I doubled the parking space of the aircrafts, we could triple the throughput of the aid. So I wrote a plan, literally on the back of a fag packet. It was then faxed to the MOD in London. The MOD went, "Yeah, it's a good plan, Higgins. We'll send your squadron over." So the squadron flew over, and over the next 3 months, we maintained the runway. We put some defences in for the French army, but we doubled the size of the aircraft apron. And as a consequence, it went from 30 tonnes of wheat a day to 90 tonnes of wheat a day. There's an example. I'm not saying they were the figures, but that's what happened. And so it tripled throughput. And then I flew home, and we came back after that. It was the greatest adventure. It was also quite, there was battles, there were skirmishes, there was disease, there was some horrendous scenes that my soldiers had to put up with.
Yeah.
And the weather was awful, but we delivered. I then came back and I moved to another job. And a year later, I was called in to see my boss, and he said, "Higgins, congratulations." I said, "What do you mean, Brigadier?" And he said, "You've been awarded the MBE." And I said, "What for?" And he said, for your work in the Congo last year. And then 3 months later, I went to the Buckingham Palace, and Queen Elizabeth presented me with my MBE.
Wow.
It was an adventure. So a great adventure. It was just the best thing I'd ever done in the army, and then to be awarded the MBE a year later for what we had achieved in the Congo. So that's what the MBE is for.
That's fantastic. What a story.
Yeah.
Bit of a sensitive topic to some people that might be watching, but I feel like I need to ask at this point, mental health awareness for veterans, because there are lots of veterans in the construction industry that are going to be watching this or looking to go into the construction industry that might struggle. Have you got any advice on that area of the mental health? When I joined the army in 1983, mental health was nothing. Yes.
And I'm proud to say for the last 10 years of my military career, so what was that? The 2000s up to 2012, it was taken a lot more seriously. PTSD was readily spoken about, and I think the military was ahead of perhaps its civilian counterparts with regards to dealing with mental health. And towards the end of my career, we would talk freely about our mental health more so than we do. But in the point about mental health with veterans is talk about it. Do not hide it. Be open with it and seek help. And there are charities out there, the Royal British Legion, SAFA, and other charities that will help with that. And it really upsets me when I hear of friends and others and soldiers who have committed suicide because they haven't reached out. So there's reaching out and asking for help, but there's also recognising it and asking people if they're okay, but really meaning, are you okay? So going beyond the superficial first answer you get. So no, but are you really okay? And the best way I've found over the years to find out if somebody's okay is go for a walk with them. And normally after a couple of hours in the mountains, because I'm very lucky where I live in Cumbria that we've got the Pennines and the fells around me, or just going for a walk down the high street and just speaking to people and every now and then reaching out and asking people, are you okay? And in myself, I've recognised certain periods in my military career where I have suffered. In the early days, I suffered alone, and it was a very lonely place. In the latter half of my military career, I didn't suffer alone, and it was a great help talking to people. And when you consider what service men and women do, there are some big demons, and there are some horrible things that we have to deal with, but talking about it is the best medicine.
It's the best advice you can give, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. And don't suffer alone. Don't suffer alone.
So this topic does spiral quite heavily into construction with people that work in the military as well. I think it's 3 construction workers take their lives every day, which is quite a high statistic.
Yeah.
So would the advice be the same for these people from your point of view?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you had a physical injury, you would go and seek help. And if you have a mental health injury, then you still should go and seek help. And the first step to that is by saying I have a problem and seeking help. It's not suffering alone. Mental health can be treated, but you need to tell people you have a problem because we can't see it. So you need to talk about it. And in some parts of the industry, that's, you could be seen as a weakness, but it's certainly not a weakness. And we shouldn't judge people because someone has a mental health issue. We should support them. We should actively help them. And we should never accept, yes, I'm okay as the first answer.
Does Story have anything in place for this topic?
Yes, it does.
Yes,
it does. We have, in fact, I've signed on to a mental health session, which Story are laying on across all their depots and all their sites over the next 2 months. And it's not just something we do once a year; it's something we do regularly. And we have mental health first aiders trained in offices, depots and factory locations. And so it's something that we will perhaps focus on a couple of times a year with workshops and with awareness sessions, but it's also a day-to-day thing that we do, and when we look after our own people with our mental health first aiders. And in fact, the company that are coming to speak to us over the next couple of months, ex-rugby league player.
Oh, right.
And he's quite highly regarded in his team in the industry. But he'll come talk about his issues, and he'll explain how we can deal with them and look after ourselves. But I think that the whole point is just being aware that a physical injury and a mental health injury are the same, but they both need to be treated, even though one can't be seen.
You couldn't have worded that any better. I agree. So I have been researching and looking through some articles, and one in particular has captured my attention. So it was an article that was published on NSAR, and it's in regards to the rail industry expanding due to growth. So there's been quite a lot of contribution from the government in regards to monies being given to this sector. So we've got 96 billion of investments that's going to be integrated into the rail plan. Now, do you know anything about this, where this is going to, what it's being used for? Yeah. I think you're going to have all the answers to this question.
I don't. You referred to me as an expert at the beginning. It's a bit embarrassing because I'm not an expert. NSAR, and the CEO is a guy called Neil Robertson, he's a good friend of mine. Neil knows his onions. But in the rail industry, and I suspect in the construction industry, there is more work than can be delivered by the workforce that's available. And in the 10 years I've been in the industry, the shortage of skilled people has been an issue and is a constant issue. But the point I would make, I think, for apprentices, for example, for every £1 you spend on apprentices, that is returned as a £3 investment back. And so why wouldn't you invest in apprenticeships? And it's something that we do in Story quite firmly. Is 10% of our workforce are early careers, and that is on the lines of apprenticeships, graduates, and second careers. And Story spends a lot of time and effort in bringing new people in at the bottom and developing and training them through the ranks and up. We do bring in people at different levels because it's always good to bring in fresh blood from other industries and from outside the industry. But Story tend to recruit and develop within and promote and develop and train. And in our training school, we can train across management, leadership, communications, and also all the technical skills and tickets that you need. And so Story invests quite heavily in training its own workforce and in recruiting fresh talent into the industry. But 10% of our workforce are early careers, which I think is quite important. Now, Neil in that article for NSAR has identified that the industry needs to invest a lot more in the workforce. And it needs to, and the industry itself, when there is billions of pounds of work flowing down from the government or from the client into the industry needs to perhaps commit to taking on more people and to training those people and identifying where we can attract more people from. And the initiative which I'm involved with is recruiting into the industry, as you'd expect, from the military.
Yeah.
And perhaps from those who have made a mistake in life and who've perhaps been in a young offenders institute or prison for a crime but deserve a second chance in life. Perhaps we're recruiting from that market. There's also perhaps looking at people returning to work. So second careers, parents who've gone away to bring up a child but now looking to come back into another industry separate from where they were at first. So looking at that, and we need to look widely at those areas. We can't recruit more people from the European Union because 50% of the workforce that was here has returned back to those countries. So we need to look at developing something more internally in this country. Now, I'm very keen on recruiting locally from where you work. Recruit locally, but start younger. And as you think about going back to my story, I was recruited from the army, came to my school in 1983 when I was 15. I hadn't thought about joining the army that day, but because they're in my school, it suddenly flicked a switch. But we need to get into school a bit younger, and just to start influencing young girls and boys that the railway industry or construction industry is a great career to be in, and then being visibly part of their school life, and doing that by introducing activities and by suggesting to the gatekeepers at school, so the parents, the teachers, the leader of the Brownies or the Cubs, to keep telling them how good the rail industry is. So we're starting to influence youngsters and getting them focused on the railway at the younger age. Then bringing them into industry, training them, giving them a good salary, giving them a career path, and looking at perhaps sharing them across different companies so they get their eyes open to different sectors, different parts of the rail industry. So they get that broad general understanding of what the industry is like. And then perhaps as they get older, they can focus on a specific area. But it's something we collectively need to do as an industry. We can't solve it as individual businesses. And this is where NSAR helps. I mean, NSAR is the body that's responsible for the collective training of the rail industry. But we need to work together. We can't work separately from. There's no point in me paying a plant operator an extra £1 an hour so I can poach him from another company, because that doesn't solve the issue. The shortage is still there. So we collectively need to look at doing something together. And I've always argued that the rail industry doesn't promote itself as much as it should do about how good the rail industry is. The rail industry, you can have a full career in most aspects of jobs that you wouldn't even think of. You can be a baker, you could be a doctor or a medic, you could be a train driver, obviously. You could be a program planner, you could be a caterer, you can be a surveyor. There's so many different roles that are not just the standard what we perceive to be a network rail train driver or a platform dispatcher. And we need to market the industry better collectively, and we need to say this is the rail industry, this is the career it can give you. These are the opportunities it can give you, and this is the types of jobs that we're looking at. So, a long-winded answer to your question, but I suppose if I was to say one thing, it's that we need to collectively address it as an organisation, not individually as a business. Now, each business can play their part, but we need to collectively address that situation.
What's in my mind now is, as the older generation are coming up to retirement, you're constantly going to have to pull these fresh people in to replace those roles and obviously train them up, etc.
Yeah.
And you mentioned going into schools could be a fantastic way, telling them at an early age all the different opportunities that are available. Now, you did touch on just there the different roles that can be kind of taken in the rail industry. Now, what kind of roles could be taken at story contracting? So if there's anyone young watching this and they don't realise how many opportunities are available, what's the spectrum like for that?
Goodness me, there are opportunities to be working in construction, to be at the front line. There are also opportunities to be working in the commercial sector, so quantity surveyor, estimator, a bid writer, commercial manager. There's also opportunities to be working in HR. We're an organisation that's currently 900 people. It'll need to grow by another 100 people over the next 2 or 3 years, so we need to recruit people. So there's the whole HR function there, recruiting and then supporting. There's a training school, so we need trainers and developers. We need managers, we need program managers, we need contract managers, we need contract delivery managers. We need supply chain analysts, but the opportunities are endless, and the entry points are apprentice, graduate, undergraduate, or just a normal entrant. So what I would say is take a look at our website, and if you look at our website, we break down the opportunities by discipline, by our regions. There are many differing opportunities. Plant operator. We need some plant operators to operate our fleet of 100 plant machines. We need geotechnician experts. We need well drillers. We need soil nailers. It's amazing how many opportunities there are in Story, and of course we need to look wide and far for to people to fill those positions. And that's where I focus on the military, because most of those appointments that I've just mentioned are in the military. So why wouldn't I go to the military? And we've just taken on 4 people this week from the military to fill 4 of those positions. So that's the opportunities in Story. And if you're looking at this and you're a 14 or 15-year-old at school and you think, I want to learn more, then take a look at the website and get in contact with us, because we do offer placements for work experience, and they're proper week and 2-week work experience people. We offer hundreds each year. For our undergraduate scheme, they come to us for a year, and part of their degree course they get paid a decent wage for that year they're with us. They learn all those skills and experiences which they can then apply during their final year at university. Or just speak to anybody who's wearing a Story logo and say, what opportunities do you have in Story and how can I apply? But the opportunities are many, and anybody joining as a new entrant, there is a career path. No matter how you join, there is a career path to go all the way to the top to become the boss of the company.
And I like the way that the background of the person isn't looked at, so you can come from any background, any career, any age, and there's something for you.
Yes, and if we see quality in you, and if you like us, then there's an opportunity for you. And if you were to walk into a Story office and meet the people there, you would see people from a broad range of life, different ages, and they're all decent people. Now, they're all got a spark about them. They all want to work for Story, and that's the thing I like about Story. It's that I enjoy working there. The people enjoy working there, and because it's family run and family led, you are part of the family, and as part of the family, you look out for each other. And there's this willingness to want to succeed. You don't go to work wanting your company to fail. You go to work wanting it to succeed. And there is this can-do spirit about everybody in Story. But if anybody's watching this and they like what they hear, take a look at the website, look at the list of opportunities available, apply, and even if there is an opportunity that you want to apply for, just whack your CV in, because we've just appointed somebody who put their CV on spec, and we spotted a skill in her that we need. And we've taken her on. We're going to give her a year learning the business, and then we're going to put her against this role that she's a specialist in. But she just put her CV in on spec. And now she's starting in January in this new role for us. So don't be discouraged by the fact that there's not a job that you want to do listed. Just put your CV in.
we'll put at the bottom of the screen where to send that to us also. I hope you get hundreds of them. I
I
really
hope so
do.
too. I hope so too. But the thing is, take a look at the website and you'll get a feel for who we are.
Kind of similar topic. You've got a scheme going on at the moment at Story. Let me find what it's exactly
Is
called.
this the Story Startup?
It is. Story
Yeah.
Startup.
And I'm incredibly proud of this. It's not my idea, but I'm incredibly proud of this. The supply chain, the rail supply chain, is as important as any big organisation. The railway industry has hundreds of thousands of suppliers in it, and we as an industry are always too worried about looking up to our client and making sure that we're doing what the client wants us to do. But what I'm really proud about Story is that it's now looking down its supply chain, not down its nose, but looking through its supply chain and going, guys, we need you. As we grow, we need our supply chain to grow with us. Now, we understand you may be constrained by finance or by muscle. So what Story are doing is offering financial support to startups, entrepreneurs, SMEs who want to expand or break into or develop into the rail industry and the other sectors that we operate in. We are doing our first round of applications and we're inviting those types of organisations to let us help them. The application closes at the end of this year, and the first round of successful applicants will be next year, and that will be with financial support and or mentorship and or advice. And I'm incredibly proud that us as an organisation has said, right, we know our supply chain is important. We need you to be successful. We need you to be innovative. We need you to support us, but we understand you need our help. And so we're putting money, time and effort behind that. And the Story Startup is something with which I'm incredibly proud of.
I'd like to dig into it a little bit more if possible, because I know there's going to be a lot of subcontractors and construction professionals watching this that might already have a small company or might want to start one. So can we give it a bit more detail of how you can help them and what they should do?
Well, first of all, take a look at the website.
Yep.
All the details on the website under the Story Startup scheme. But I think if you're one woman and a dog and you're bricklaying and you want to take on more people because you can see the work's out there and you just need a bit more money to take on an apprentice, then apply. Tell us that this is your organisation, but you're constrained by that, and apply online. And then what's happening is it's not a dragon's den, because it's not going to be done. You're not having to battle to win this. You're just going to have to present the opportunity to this team and say, I'm a one-woman bricklaying company. I want to take an apprenticeship, but I'm constrained by the fact that I don't have the money to pay for the training she needs. And then Story will go, okay, we'll pay for that apprentice for you. And by the way, if you want some advice with training or with how you can develop your business plan to get more money from your bank to help you do this, then our commercial managers will help you do it. Oh, and by the way, we've got a training school in Carlisle. Why don't you bring your apprentice bricklayer to our training school and we can show them how to do other stuff in the railway industry. So there's different, and if you're a small business, the medium size, I suspect it wouldn't need our support. But if you're on the small end of an SME, then and you need to perhaps look at finance to help build a bigger facility or buy some specialist equipment that we could help with, then again, put your case in the application, come and talk to us, explain what you need, why you want it, and if Story can help, we will help. But it's for those who are breaking into or who've started, who are a small starter. We want to start at the very, not the very bottom, that sounds weird, but we want to start at the lower end and help them grow. Because as they grow and come up through the supply chain, then all the other suppliers around them will grow as well. So it's that seed funding and that help. Because I've been in a very small organisation and I know how hard it is. But if you were to have a company like Story give you support financially and with advice and mentoring, that's hugely beneficial.
It is. What they can learn is just phenomenal, isn't it?
Because Fred, whose company it is, he started with one man and a shovel and a JCB. That's how he started.
Did he?
Yeah, so he started in 1987, digging foundations for homes in Cumbria, in Carlisle. And so he was digging foundations for home builders in and around the Carlisle area. He had a JCB and thought, well, what can I do with this? at the weekends it's not earning the money. So he then went to work on the rail at weekends, supporting the rail industry. And then he took on some people, and then he grew and he grew. And so from that early start, Fred, one man and a shovel and the JCB, has gone from that to being a home builder throughout the Northwest and in Scotland, and running a company that turns over in excess of £200 million a year in support of his rail industry. So that's what can happen. And Fred never forgets his roots. Fred will still walk around the company, knows people by their first name, meets every new employee, and will speak to them. And John and Emma, his daughter and son, run parts of the business, and that's one of the best things that Story could have said to me when I was researching them before I went for my interviews. They have 6 values, and I sign up for all of those 6 values. But the one that really got me was grounded, and the value just says grounded, and it's an image of a shovel in the ground. And I think, you know what, that's me. I'm grounded. I'd like to think I'm grounded. No pomposity. Do a good job. Earn a decent dollar, have a good time, and enjoy the people you're working with. But be grounded, remember who you are, remember what you are, and just do a good job. And Fred, that spirit still runs through the company, and in his homes business and in his contracting business. And so why wouldn't he, as a business, want to support people 35 years down the line who are trying to do the same thing?
Fred smashed it, hasn't he?
He smashed it, yeah.
So the company's turned 35 this year as well, is that right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And he created it, he's been
He
there.
created 1987, and you know what? Everybody in the company that day on the 35th anniversary got a hamper.
Did they?
Even somebody who started the day before. So either we've been there one day or 35 years, everybody got the same hamper delivered to their house or address on the same day. And a note on the inside said, from Fred, saying thank you, and thank you for where we've come, and thank you for taking it forward. And again, the mark of the man, just that personal touch.
Does he have a lot of involvement still in director meetings and from the high level passing it down?
No, Jason Butterworth, our chief executive officer, does that. That's and Fred is very much on a helicopter view over the 2 businesses. He still is chair of both businesses. But I suspect he doesn't have so much of a day-to-day organisation with the contracting business. With the Story Homes, he has more involvement. But with Story Contracting, it's Jason Butterworth, our CEO, who does the day-to-day running of the organisation.
Awesome.
But you've got Emma, who's Fred's daughter, running the plant business, and John, also in the plant business, but also they both sit on the board as well. So there is that day-to-day management with Emma and John with the contracting business.
So it definitely is a family-orientated business, to say the least.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Another topic that I wanted to speak to you about, it might not be what you specialise in, but the world's kind of going quite mad to be green at the moment. And I assume Story is following in the footsteps of that, if not leading some of it. Is there anything that you can tell us in regards to this topic, eco-friendly, etc.?
I think the net zero by 2050 and 2045 in Scotland, where Story operates. So really 2045 Story needs to be net zero. It is a key driving force behind us. With 100 fleet of plant machinery, we're looking at how we can reduce our emissions using modern engines in there. But there's an eye towards the next 10, 15, 20 years with battery or hydrogen powered vehicles. So there is an understanding that we need to play our part in how we operate. We, for example, our welfare cabins are all renewable powered, and we look at modern methods of construction which reduce our reliance on carbon. So the way we operate is that we will reduce and mitigate and take to zero our carbon emissions, but obviously over a period of time we have to do that because it will take considerable investment. But we don't shy away from our responsibilities. We understand we'll do that, and we want to do that. But as an organisation, we have an energy division, and we are looking at hydrogen and nuclear, looking at breaking into those areas as well with regards to supporting the UK government get to net zero. Now, nuclear isn't the silver bullet, but it's a bullet in a silver bucket of bullets. It's one answer to how we can do it. So nuclear is one of those. Hydrogen is another opportunity as well, and we're looking at supporting the production of green hydrogen. Obviously, we won't create that hydrogen, but we can do the civil engineering and the project management and the balance of plant that goes with it. And we're speaking to several companies at the moment with regards to hydrogen plants. We are involved with onshore power. We're involved with battery storage sites, and we're looking at investing in those opportunities as well. So both as a company, we're ethically aligned to carbon neutral by 2045 and earlier if we can, and also we're looking at working in those sectors that will help industry reduce its reliance on carbon and getting to net zero by 2050.
Is there any special projects that you've been involved in where they've been having to put certain things in place to follow suit?
What do you mean with our clients, like Network Rail, for example? Yeah, we've done a piece of work for Network Rail at Hawden Station. Hawden Station is in the northeast, and with one of our partners, we looked at retrospectively applying technologies to that station that would reduce its reliance on carbon. So we looked at PV panels, we looked at small wind turbines, and at a cost of £150,000 in initial capital outlay, which would be paid back over 3 years, that station would be completely reliant on renewable energy after 3 years at no cost, providing charging for electric bikes and for EVs as well. And so that's something we can do and have done for our client. But also, when we work for our clients in large construction projects, we will always go back with a solution to the problem they give us, but also with a suggestion to saying, but have you thought about using solar panels, batteries, hydrogen or wind or onshore power to help to deliver these sectors? So we will go back with a compliance solution, but we'll also offer a green solution. And most times the client will accept the green solution because they understand it helps mitigate the risk with regards to carbon as well.
It does actually save on cost in the long run for the client, doesn't it, in
Absolutely.
most cases?
And makes money.
Yeah.
And actually can make money because surplus power is then fed back into the grid, which they'll get money for. So you can actually make money by reducing your reliance on carbon.